Hey everyone, hope you've been doing well. I've got another Helix tip video for you today, and we're going to move fast in this one because I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's a deep topic, but I want to give you a sort of an introduction to making use of the sag, hum, ripple, bias, and the bias X controls in the Helix amp blocks. This is a really useful way to tune the digital amps and make them feel and respond a little bit more like an actual tube amp would. Alright, so let's just get into it. I'm on the HX Edit program here, and this is just because it's a much easier way to show you everything on the screen. And we're going to be using the free preset from my website. This is the divided by 13 FTR emulation that I came up with, kind of an all-purpose blues rock tone. So that's the clean sound, and really all of these controls that I mentioned, they respond a lot better when the master volume is cranked up. This is to simulate the power tubes on an amp, basically the master volume on an amp being cranked all the way up, and it also responds a little bit better with the drive controls up. So I'm going to hit foot switch 1 here, and this is just going to change some parameters here, plenty of stuff to suit a more overdriven tone. If you're on one of the smaller Helix units, this is a great way to save some DSP and save yourself a block. So just dial up all the parameter changes here to a foot switch. I've got some other videos on that I can link above. But basically, let's just go through each one here. And I don't want to talk about the technical side of things too much because invariably I'll get it a little bit wrong and someone will correct me. I want to talk about what it actually sounds like we're changing and how we can actually apply this. So less on the technical side of things. Let's start with the sag control. This is supposed to emulate how the tubes in a tube amp's preamp section kind of react. Right, if we turn it all the way down, we're going to get a tighter feeling, a quicker response, less dynamic changes. We crank it up. Now as I turn that up, you might have heard of a little bit of a change in volume there. But what you should be focusing on, and I'm going to go back and do that again, is how the amp breaks up. I'm going to try it just with single notes now, so this is with minimum sag. My cat's pushing my computer here behind me. There is a volume change when you adjust this parameter, so if you want to set this up with a foot switch trigger, you should be setting it up alongside of a channel volume control. This cat needs to move. This is Jackie, everyone. Alright. So in short, the sag control is adjusting a little bit of character of overdrive, and it's also changing the amount of compression that you're getting. Again, at lower settings, it gives you a tighter feel, which might be more suited for modern styles. And with the sag maxed out, you're getting something that a lot of blues players would appreciate. Kind of the chewy, natural breakup of a cranked tube amp. Alright, so I'm going to go back and set that back to the default setting because I forget what it was at. And now let's talk about the hum control. If you crank it up, you're going to hear an audible hum. You might need headphones for a lot of this video, by the way. If you turn it all the way down, the hum goes away. I like to personally turn it up to as loud as you can get it without it actually being noticeable. So I'm turning it up in order to get some of the influence that a ground hum might have on the tone or the quality of overdrive that you're getting through a digital amp. So if we compare that with at minimum setting, it's going to be a very subtle difference. It just kind of changes the way that the amp reacts. And when you're tone designing in the Helix, you got to keep in mind that everything is cumulative. So in other words, the adjustments by themselves might be very minimal, but as you add it together, you'll come up with something that's a lot more usable if you take the time and dial in all these really kind of obscure, subtle settings. Let's move on to the ripple control. This, if you listen to it, you're definitely going to need headphones for this. It kind of creates a subharmonic, I might like to say, underneath the note you're playing, and it's really noticeable with single note lines. So right now you might have even noticed that, and if you've got a master volume amp and you've ever cranked it up to full volume, the Supra behind me definitely has that kind of quality. When you crank it, you get this kind of chewy, like harmonic undertone to it. So let's just listen to it in the stock setting. All the way up. And off. If we listen to it on single notes, you might really start noticing. So this is with the ripple off. And maxed out. It's really noticeable right there. Can you hear the undertone? I want to say it's a... It's a G sharp note on this note. It's not something that you're going to notice at all, I think, in a full band mix. By itself, it's kind of even hard to notice, but it's something that... Come on, cat. She is a tyrant today. When I first got the Helix, the ripple was something that I pretty much left on 0 all the time, until I really started digging in and trying to get good overdriven tones. This was something that came in handy for me. Yeah, so I'm going to switch presets there just so we can revert back to the normal setup. Okay, so ripple was at 4.4 in this preset. The bias and the bias X controls do a little bit of the same thing. You're going to notice that they change the character of overdrive, and the bias control, obviously when you have a tube amp, and if you've looked into it at all, you might have read about the term bias. It has something to do with how the tubes are set up to work with the amplifier, and I don't want to talk about the specifics again because I'll definitely get it wrong. But the bias controls on the Helix are going to change the quality of overdrive you're getting. The bias X control is probably my favorite one to use here. But let's just start with bias. Let's set that one back to normal. And then we'll start playing with the bias X control. clear how much of a different tone we can get just by adjusting these 5 parameters, even though individually they might not have such a huge effect on tone. But all together, put together, it's cumulative, and it can make a massive difference in how you're dialing in amp presets and trying to get a more realistic tone out of the Helix. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you haven't picked up this preset yet, she's playing with the tremolo arm on my Stratocaster above her. If you haven't picked up this preset yet, you can check it out at my website, and the link's in the description. It's free, again. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, share it with a friend, and maybe consider subscribing to the channel. I try and do Helix tip videos like this all the time. And thank you for watching. Thanks for sharing your time with me. I'll see you in the next one.